I'm calling this meeting to order. This is the January 13th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting for Finance Administration and Communications. Council members in attendance are Councilmember Stewart, Council President Stewart, Council Vice President Nueva Camina, Councilmember Forsyth, Councilmember Soni, Councilmember Procria, and myself, Presiding Officer, Councilmember Kritzer. There are two items on our agenda today, the Council Rules of Procedure discussion and the Council vacancy process preparation discussion, as well as we'll do a good of the order at the end since we won't have council talk time tonight. The first item on our agenda is the Council Rules of Procedure discussion. I will just open this to note that at last year's final meeting of the year, it was brought up by Council President Stewart that the idea to make some updates to our rules of procedure, Council Vice President Nueva Camina and myself volunteered to work with Councilmember Stewart on looking at a couple items that have been flagged by the council as things that we wanted to update. And we have been working along with the city clerk to look at a couple of those items. I'll turn it over to Council President Stewart to give us an update on that process, as well as some of the items we've identified that we'll be bringing back to council.
Yeah, thank you so much. And really, for the scope of this conversation, these are the things that were brought up in previous council conversations and agreed upon in December. There may be a whole host of other ideas that come forward for the council rules of procedure, but that is outside the scope of kind of what our task was over the winter recess. So just simply reporting back to you that we are making progress on the work that we said we would over the recess, and the three of us are set to meet with the clerk next Friday to review a draft. So you do not have materials in your packet today. I'll walk you through just a quick reminder of what the topics are that are under consideration, but we do hope to be back in front of you all pretty soon here with an actual draft for us to all discuss and respond to. So just as a reminder, one of the suggestions from Councilmember Forsyth was to integrate the process we are creating for how to fill a vacancy. Obviously, we will do that when we are completed with the process and we know what works about it and what we'd like to improve about it. That'll also give the council, the next time a council vacancy occurs, it'll give a really strong starting point with how to create a process, whereas this time it really was creating from scratch. The second is integrating the rules for how our subcommittees are chartered. These were agreed to in our last council retreat, and we're bringing that forward. The third is around policies and procedures around attendance, which were also a prioritized interest at our last council retreat. There is a fourth recommendation that we hope to bring forward, and it offers a technical fix to something in our items for the audience rules right now, and it was identified as a technical fix by the clerk. I just wanted to acknowledge today that Cheryl Santos has been an awesome partner in this. We'll have a chance to review that draft, like I said, with her on Friday of next week, and then be back in front of you and have a chance to talk through that with you after that. So happy to answer any process questions, but really we are containing the conversation to these couple of things that the council has previously discussed. Thanks.
Councilmember Forsyth?
Thank you. So in the conversation where we were talking about the council appointment process, we had talked about getting this into our rules. That also stemmed around the voting mechanism that we were using. So I want to make sure that part of that conversation does not get lost in that. So thanks.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Council President Stewart, did you have a comment on that or no? Just to follow up. Yes.
Makes sense. Thanks. Yeah.
Great. Sounds good. And I think there were a couple items. I'll just note that when we looked at a couple other potential things to include in scope and thought that we could tackle them with our new legislative coordinator being able to do some research for us on a couple different topics as well in the time ahead. Any other questions or comments on this? This was mostly an update. All right, not seeing any, we'll move on to the next item, which is the council vacancy process preparation. So tonight we will be interviewing the top 11 scoring candidates out of the over 35 applications that we received for the vacancy. I want to just start by saying thank you to everyone who applied for this. It's really wonderful to see all the passion and excitement from our community and just really the depth of commitment to community service within Redmond. And it's definitely already been a tough decision. We'll have some ahead. We do want to make sure it's a really fair process. I'm going to turn it over to the mayor to describe just some details around chairing the process, since it will be a special meeting tonight. And then we'll talk about a couple other items, so that way we're all ready to go. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I also want to commend our community, over 35 people applying, no small endeavor to take on the idea of being a council member. So really appreciate that. Our community stepping up. I also want to share that when the council went through their first view of the applications, we deleted any identifying characteristics of that. So that was called what's called a blind application process. So no one knew who they were. So it helped us, I feel like, start on a fairer foot, not having an idea who the people are, just reading about their qualifications for it. So from that, the council has selected 11 people that will have moved forward for interviews tonight. Each council applicant will have 15 minutes to answer 6 questions that they have received already, and that the council has as well. So the applicants could be prepared for them. They'll be able to take that 15 minutes and answer those 6 questions. They'll have to manage their time, as we all do. The council members will, in a little bit, select who's going to ask which question each time, so we keep it consistent. So each person will have 15 minutes. There'll be a 5-minute transition period where we have staff that will be escorting people in from what we call our Bites Cafe, which the others will be waiting. And then we'll have a break in the middle, 10 minutes, so we can get a little adjusted, and then the rest of the candidates. And then at the end of the time, council and I will recess into executive session to discuss qualifications of the candidates, and then we will come back out into session, and the council will vote on the top candidates they want to bring back for next week for the last round of interviews. I don't know how many councils, it's 4 or less, I think is what I'm understanding, 2 or 3, 4, some 2 or 3. And so that will happen tonight. Those candidates can stay and wait and listen, or we will notify them in the morning and get them set up for that. And then next week, on a special session, council will interview the remaining candidates and make a decision, and then whoever they choose and vote on, who gets a majority of vote, that's how it works, will actually be seated at that time and sworn in. So that is overall the process, and we have staff who will keeping time and making sure all of the candidates are taken care of prior to them being interviewed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mayor Burney, and thank you for chairing our special meeting tonight. I also want to thank Catherine Laird and everyone in HR who has assisted with this process in ensuring that everyone who has applied is eligible based on the basic criteria, the main criteria being that you have to have lived in the city of Redmond for at least a year before applying for this position. So one of the things that we have to do before we do the interviews tonight is to choose who is going to ask which question. And we thought it would be easiest for each council member to take one of the 6 questions that we have come up with. I think it was not attached to this item, but it was attached to a previous item. I will run through the questions in case council members don't have them available. Actually, I can probably just do that's all right. I'll just run through them and ask, does everyone have a copy of the questions in front of them, or should I screen share? Let me log on for a second into the meeting, because I did not log on because we're all here in person, and I will screen share, so that way it's a little bit easier for us all to take a look at this. Okay, I will just screen share here, so that way the public can also follow along as well. Boop. Let's see. All right, good. We've got the screen share. Ooh. Okay, so here's the questions. I'm also putting them up on the screen so that we all can see them. So we'll start where each of us, with each of these interviews, where we'll each get to go around, introduce ourselves. I believe we'll have an initial remark from Council President Stewart, and then we'll go in and introduce each of ourselves to the candidates, to one of our future colleagues. And then we'll have these 6 questions. So why do you want to serve on the council, and how do you envision your approach to successful service? What knowledge, experiences, or perspective has uniquely prepared you to serve on council? If appointed to the role, how would you go about getting up to speed and being prepared to jump in on a wide variety of policy issues we're working on? The council prioritizes promoting a culture of respect, equity, diversity, and inclusion throughout the city. As a council member, how would you engage meaningfully with the community to ensure we consider a diversity of perspectives in our decision-making and make our government more accessible? From your perspective, what are the most pressing needs for the council to take action on, or to take on, and what actions would you take? And the council is often asked to make decisions impacting groups of people who offer differing or strong opinions, and council members may disagree with each other. How would you approach making these tough decisions? So those are the 6 questions. What's proposed is for each of us to take on one, and we ask the same question in each interview. And the goal is that each person will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Is there any question that any of you feel passionate about asking? Councilmember Forsyth.
I was just going to suggest that since normally we do things by seniority, we allow our new council members to choose first.
Oh, that sounds like a great idea. Well, I saw Councilmember Soni had her hand up. Go ahead, Councilmember Soni.
First of all, thank you so much, Councilmember Forsyth, for giving us this opportunity first. And I'll definitely prefer to ask a question on diversity, focus, and community engagement.
Okay, great. So Councilmember Soni will ask question number 4. Councilmember Prakriya, do you have a question you'd like to ask?
Yes, thank you. Can I take question 1?
Question 1, okay. Are you marking, you want to mark this down, Mayor Bernie? Great. So question 1, and then I'll go to Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
I will take question 6.
All right. Question 6, great. And then I'll go to Council President Stewart, since we're going in seniority order.
I'll take question number 2, thanks.
And Council Member Forsyth.
Sorry, which did Council President?
Number 2.
Okay.
So I think 3 and 5 are left.
I will take 5.
All right, I'll go number 3. Okay, I think we all have our number, so remember which one yours is, but the mayor will also, I think in facilitating the meeting, will call on us so you remember it's your turn. So I think we've got that all selected. We also received an email this afternoon from Director Laird with a couple of questions, and so I just wanted to run through those. I think a few maybe were just already worked out, but I will check on those. I think, actually, I'll go with the last one first. There was a question about if the candidate doesn't stop at 15 minutes, who will interrupt? I think the mayor is the chair. The mayor can let them know they have their time. I think the question would be, is the council good with giving a little grace buffer within a minute? Mayor Bernie, go ahead.
I will do what I normally do in a council meeting, and I'll ask them to complete their sentence. And because I think we want it to be fair for all the candidates, so that will do my best at that.
Does anyone have an objection to that?
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
And then I think I think I'll just ask these more in the, is there an objection? There was also a question, if we end up with a no-show, is the council good at just going to the next applicant, knowing that applicants will be showing up at 6 o'clock, knowing that there may be a shift in the schedule? Councilmember Nueva Camina.
I object to that because I don't want anything to come across as a last-minute change in expectation. So I feel like we've already set the expectation. There's a schedule that's on there. So if they're kind of gathering their thoughts and they're still gathering it upon coming in, to give them that opportunity to do that.
Okay. So you would prefer to take a 20-minute break?
Correct.
Okay. Mayor Bernie?
I would just say I talked with the staff after that went out, and we talked about the challenges if we did move the schedule around, and feel like it's a little bit confusing to somewhat like Councilman Nueva Camina, and thinking about we'll just leave it the same and we'll just have a little break.
I think we only have one 10-minute break. See, that's the most significant one planned. So if that happened, I think it makes sense. If everyone else is good, then we will plan to keep the order. And if there ends up being a gap, unless there's many gaps, which I doubt, since everyone seems so excited to apply for this position, that we would just take a break. All right, I'm seeing nods here, so we're all agreed on that as part of the process. The last was a question around if the schedule ended up where we started the executive session earlier. My understanding is that we would call the executive, as we announce the executive session when it's going to start, and that's what determines when the executive session can start. Is that correct, Mayor Burney?
That is correct. We don't actually have it set at a particular time to start. We just have it set when the rest is done.
But as a reminder, we will say when it starts and when it will end, since we are going to be coming back and taking action after the executive session. If we say we're taking 30 minutes for the executive session, we do need to stay in there for the entire 30 minutes and not return until then. So we also could extend the executive session as needed, but we can't do less than what we announce, and since the public will be expecting us to come back after the executive session. Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, although I objected to not moving it up, however, if it were the last candidate interview that for whatever reason did not, there was a it was a no-show, then I would not be opposed if we moved up the executive session.
All right, that sounds good. I think, are we all good with saying that generally we'll keep to the same slots, but if there's a circumstance we all agree on that there can be some flexibility, the chair can bring up to us the option to be able to go to executive session at that time. All right, I'm seeing head nods and thumbs up. So I think, and just if anyone has any questions about other details on the candidate experience, you did receive that information from Director Laird earlier today. Are there any other questions about tonight's process or comments? Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Thank you. Just a quick comment on the experience that we were emailed on, and just thanking the council, thanking all of you for being so flexible, being so willing to jump in and get that on such a short turnaround. So thank you.
And thank you, council leadership, for your work this week. Council President Stewart.
Sure. Thank you so much. Just a couple of things. Logistically, we will be sitting at these tables for our interviews just like we would for interviewing a commissioner. Following the executive session, we will move up to the dais to take action following the executive session, just so everyone is aware of that. A couple of other things. Thank you so much, Councilmember Kritzer, you covered so much of it, and the mayor, thank you. And one thing I actually noticed in the course of this conversation, which is exactly what this conversation was for, to help us all feel prepared, it looks like we have a little bit of confusion around the 1-minute introduction before the interview questions begin. The chair introduced that time as time for us each to go around and introduce ourselves. I don't know that we intended to do that 11 times throughout the night, but we could have that conversation. And then the page in front of us actually says introduction by Council President Stewart. I don't need to necessarily do that. I think for those who were involved in the initial designs, the intent was actually to have the candidate introduce themselves. And so we kind of have 3 things. What I might propose is actually, if the council wants to go around 11 times and introduce themselves, we can absolutely do that. Otherwise, I might say we could use that 1 minute for the candidate to sit, introduce themselves with their name and pronouns, and then we can begin.
I'll say I think that makes sense. Perhaps we could just look to you as council president to give them a little welcome and to ask them to introduce themselves. Or I guess we'll have the mayor to do the chairing, but it might be nice for our council president to be able to just give them a little welcome for each of the candidates, in my opinion.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. We had arranged for the mayor is going to kick it to me at the beginning to say many of the things that the chair said at the top of this meeting in order to thank our community. So yes, I will go ahead and help the mayor with welcoming each of the candidates and giving them the opportunity to introduce themselves before kicking it over to Councilmember Procria to ask the first question.
Yeah, hearing what you said, I think I understand what the vision was. I didn't understand it exactly. So I would just say, I think that actually sounds fine. And actually, one thing we could do is before each of us asks our question, we can just introduce ourselves. So that way, if people don't know us, they'll see our sign, they'll know us. Mayor Burney?
Yes, I thank you for clarifying this because I was curious about that as well. I would love to not mispronounce people's names. And so I will just say we have our first candidate, or we'll bring them in. And then do you want to, how are we going to do this?
Sure.
How would you like to do this? I'm happy to do anything. I just don't, I see our first candidate's name and I'm pretty certain I would not do it justice. So share with me what you envision and I'm happy to support it.
Is that okay with you, Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Council
Absolutely.
President.
So the mayor can kick it to me. I can say, hi, welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Why don't you start with your name and pronouns, and then we'll get started with the interview. And then following their opportunity to say their name and pronouns, we can go to Councilmember Prakriya. He'll say, my name is Councilmember Prakriya, and my pronouns are whatever your pronouns are. And then you can ask your first question, and we'll follow that format for the 11 candidates. Does that work?
That sounds great to me. Others? Councilmember Forsyth?
Sounds like we're maybe making this a little more complicated than we should. So I would take a step back and just say, since the mayor is going to be bringing everyone in, having everyone come in, that maybe she just says, please introduce yourself, and then we introduce ourselves in advance. I like that addition, that we introduce ourselves in advance to each question. Then we can say our titles and all of that. It makes it a little more smooth. I feel like it's just going to get a little bungly if we try to do too much each time at the top. I do like the idea of potentially giving someone 45 seconds to briefly introduce themselves instead of just a name and pronoun, but that can be a different conversation.
Yeah, and I think any time that is saved in this 1 minute that we're now, if that goes a little shorter, they'll be able to get a little more on their other questions. So if people don't object, I think what Councilmember Forsyth just proposed, which I was the one who just made this more complicated with my initial suggestion, makes sense. I think Mayor Bernie, I would just ask if you can ask them, just welcome them and just ask them to say both their name and their preferred pronouns, just so that way we can make sure to be respectful of them during the interview process. That'd be great.
Great. So would it be okay if I summarize? Because
Go ahead, Mayor Bernie.
Excuse me. And this is how you can tell that all of us didn't talk together before this, because we're still working it out. Exactly. So I am going to welcome our candidate, and I'm going to ask them if they can introduce themselves and share their pronouns, and that is how we'll start. And then if I count the time correctly, they each have 15 minutes. It says 2 minutes a question. They actually have a little more time. They have 15 minutes for all of this, so it's really how they section it off themselves. So I think that will save a little time on the front end, and then they'll have a little more time to answer questions. Am I getting it right?
Yes, Councilmember Stewart?
I just want to say how much I love the suggestion from Councilmember Forsyth. Like I said before, do not need to speak 11 times to say hello. I think the mayor is going to be a great host.
Great. Councilmember Prakriya?
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to clarify something, which is that are we cutting them off after 2 minutes for each question, or is it 15 minutes for the whole based off of what you said? If we don't spend the whole first minute, they will have extra time on the rest of their questions. But if we are cutting them off at 2 minutes, that would not be the case.
This is a good question. I would say, I'm wondering, I did ask, because I think there is going to be a little sign that that Director Laird has that maybe the mayor could keep handy. I'd be happy to just, or have one of us run a clock, so that if someone's going way over on one question, we could just use that sign as needed. But otherwise, I think the idea would be for them to manage their time within the 6 questions. Mayor Bernie, do you have comments on that?
Yes. So I have experience with this recently. I was on the National League of Cities nominating committee, and we gave candidates 15 or 20 minutes to answer a certain number of questions. And we told them up front that would happen, and most of the people were able to answer all the questions within the time, and one did not. And so I think that's, that goes to time management. But I think that's a fair point. What can happen, I think we'll all be aware. We'll have a timekeeper up there, and Director Laird will be she'll flash the sign when it gets close to the end. But as we're going to the next questions, if, let's say, I think a good indicator would be either Councilmember Kritzer or Councilmember Soni, I might interrupt and say, just so you know, you have answered, 3 questions and you only have 5 minutes left, or something like that. So if I feel the need, I can step in and say that. But as we're talking about this, I hope that I don't have to point to you and say, it's your turn to ask the question. I hope that you will know who you're going after, so we don't have to waste their time with that, too. Does that make sense to everyone? So they're going to have 15 minutes. It's inclusive of all of this, including introduce themselves and say their pronouns, and then you'll be asking the questions, but they're going to have to manage their time with all of this.
And Mayor Bernie, can you clarify, you mentioned the timekeeper. Will the time be visible? Like, will a time?
No, she'll have her, the timer that we use for the items for the audience, so you won't be able to see it, but I think I'm going to have my phone running with the clock, with the timer on it, just so I have an idea of where we are, so.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
we don't have a timekeeping device in here other than a clock.
Sounds good. And I guess I would just ask if someone is, I think it works to do it between questions, but if someone is running very long, I just ask that at some point you jump in, just so that way, because I do want to hear the answers to all 6 questions from every candidate.
I'm happy to do that.
Councilmember Forsyth?
So the timekeeper up there, are they using the same one we use for council meetings? So will we hear the beep when the time runs out?
Yes,
And there's not a beep at 1 minute, right? It's
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
yep. So that'll just be a beep at the end.
Councilmember Soni?
Though I definitely do not anticipate, but bringing another scenario, what if somebody is not answering and not taking full 2 minutes? Shall we wait for the second question to be asked or after completing full 2 minutes? Or?
Nope, just go.
Director Laird, did you have a comment on this?
I was just going to say, I'll be up there doing the timer box, and then it shows when you get to 1 minute. So I'm going to show that up there, and then when it actually gets to the 15 minutes, it will buzz for a second, and I can turn that off, but you'll hear one buzz, and then I'm going to put this up in conclusion, and then the mayor can, if they don't stop, then the mayor can go ahead and say something. I can also, if you would like, while we're doing that, if you want, I can say 5, I can just put my hand up for you to say 5 minutes or something, if that would help you, but.
I think because the orientation of this, I don't think council members could see that. So I think my goal will be to kind of gauge when about halfway should be, and then I'll kind of let them know. If they're, I'll say nothing if they're making a good pace. If they're not, then I'll probably say something. So that'll be my indicator for you guys. I think you'll know, too.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments on this? I think it is good for us to all be clear on this and make sure we give our candidates the best chance to answer the questions. Director Laird?
I do have one clarifying question of when you would like me to start the timer. So I can start it when the introductions start, when you say, please introduce yourself, or I can start it when you ask the first question. On the schedule, it shows that the first question is a part of that 15 minutes. So just go ahead and do it when they do the introductions. Okay.
I do think it's part of the 15 minutes that's calculated. And even within that calculation, there is a buffer of 2 more minutes. So and I think that's for the transitions and the council members asking the questions. And to Councilmember Soni's point, I think if someone is more efficient on one question, it will give them a little bit more time for another question. All right, any other questions? So straightforward, right? And to Mayor Bernie's point, for everyone who's listening, this does show how we are very, very attentive to the Open Public Meetings Act. For those who are seeking to join our council, you'll see that we cannot have discussions about council business with a quorum of the council except in open session like this. So sometimes we do business like this. And I appreciate the leadership from our council as well as from the mayor and director working on this. And hopefully we'll have a really good process and some great interviews tonight. Any other comments? Otherwise, we'll close out this item. Mayor Bernie, go ahead.
I have one final question, and this is for Director Laird. So we had over 35 people who applied. Can you share with us how these candidates were notified that they made this a list of 11 and how the other candidates who applied but didn't make the interview list. Can you share us a little, just share with the public about that? Thanks.
Absolutely. So actually, there were 38 candidates that had applied, and 33 passed the verification process. The ones that did not go forward were notified through, they applied through the NeoGov application system, so they were notified through that system that they were not selected to move forward. And then the other candidates that are being selected, had been selected to interview tonight, were all called and confirmed that they will be here tonight.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'll note, since I sent a message to someone who had applied earlier today, to anyone who didn't get selected for an interview tonight, we really appreciate the applications and the interest. There was a lot of people who wanted to get involved with the city who hadn't been involved before too. And so I would encourage anyone who's in that position to take a look at our boards and commissions page. There's more than just boards and commissions. There's other types of task forces listed on there, and a lot of opportunities to get involved. We have some openings on our commissions right now. And also we have some things you can apply on anytime. One cool opportunity I'll flag for those listening is to apply for our civic results team this year. It's a budget year, and we look to our community members to weigh in on our $1 billion budget and help us to decide on what we should invest in. And that's a really cool opportunity. So you can email budget@redmond.gov if you're interested in participating in that. But also just look at that boards and commissions page, because there's lots of ways to get involved. And we also, as a council, in the last biennium, funded having a full-time volunteer coordinator in our city who can help to match like your passions with opportunities to get involved in the city. So just want to share for anyone out there, I hope that, that this will not be the end, but the beginning of your engagement with the city. And with that, we'll close out this item. All right, so the last item, so there's no other items on the agenda. I will do a good of the order item, since usually at study session we have council talk time, but we're going to be busy interviewing today, so we didn't have that on there. And I understood council leadership might have a few updates, so I will open it up for good of the order. Council President Stewart.
All right, now we are in between you and your dinner time, so we'll try to be quick. I do want to say to the team, thank you so much for an incredible first week. We had a busy week. As you can see, we also had a lot of just general work to do. And already we have been collectively together at multiple events throughout our city. And just everyone is so deeply engaged. And I truly could not ask for more. So thank you so much. I look forward to adding to this team very shortly. Couple of things for the public to note: that the committee of the whole chairs have been assigned. I do also want to give a special shout out to our newest colleagues who have actually jumped in right away and yesterday had their first agenda setting meetings, and they'll be chairing their first committees of the whole in the coming 2 weeks. So for our Finance and Administration Communication Committee, Councilmember Kritzer will be back chairing this committee, the committee that is nearest and dearest to my heart, Planning and Public Works. We are handing off to Councilmember Forsyth in her capable hands. Parks and Environmental Sustainability will be chaired by Councilmember Soni, and Public Safety and Human Services will be chaired by Councilmember Prakria. Both of our new colleagues coming off of boards and commissions related to the areas that they will now be chairing those committees. So there is an ask here actually for the council, because there's an additional recommendation that we need to make, and this one we actually need to adopt as a council and take formal action on, and that is a new representative for the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. This year marks a transition. It's been a while since that seat has been open, and it comes at a time when it's really important that we have representation in that room with a strong connection to One Redmond. So both myself and Councilmember Kritzer have appointed roles in One Redmond commitments. Councilmember Kritzer, alongside Mayor Burney, actually serves as our One Redmond board representative, so she represents us there. And I'd like to recommend to the council that Councilmember Kritzer be appointed to serve on the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. So if the council is agreeable, we can go ahead and put this on consent next week or at an upcoming meeting. But if we would like more time to speak about it, I'll work with Council Vice President Nueva Camina to find some time for a larger discussion. It's not an agenda item of its own tonight, so just looking for a little direction on that.
Are there any questions or comments on that? I saw a thumbs up. I'm willing to serve if recommended for appointment. Thank you for recommending that. Appreciate that.
Well, wonderful, and thank you all so much. And yes, thank you, Councilmember Kritzer. It's a year of transition, and we look forward to hearing your updates. We know that you are going to be a passionate advocate for council priorities. Okay, one more. This just came up today, and so Council Vice President Nueva Camina and I had a meeting with the new emergency management staff here at the city. The council has had a lot of interest in recent years about the city council's role during emergencies, and there is an upcoming training opportunity. I'm really excited to share that our staff have actually become certified trainers in some of these trainings, and so we have a little bit of opportunity to just make sure that we get these trainings covered. So I'm giving you a heads up on this because you're going to soon get an email with 3 training opportunities. They are all the same training. To avoid a violation of the Open Public Meeting Act, we cannot have a quorum at the training. And so you'll have 3 opportunities beginning in mid-March. And so when you get that email, just know you only need to sign up for one, and there'll be a lot more details about what that training covers regarding the outcomes that you can expect. And at our February Committee of the Whole for Public Safety and Human Services, we'll actually have a chance to meet the emergency management staff and share with them a little bit more about some of the things that we are interested in. Those who were around during the bomb cyclone, for instance, and we had major questions about the role of elected officials during community emergencies. Those types of questions would be really great to share with the staff. And that is all. If anyone has any questions, you can totally catch up with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council President. Any other items for good of the order? All right. Well, seeing none, that brings us to the end of our agenda, and this meeting is adjourned.